What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Outpost. It is me, Jello, and today we are going through the third startup trial deck of Divine Z. It is it is Blitz, Gigamobile, Astroterm, and yeah, we'll just get straight into it. This one's um, probably one of the more simpler decks to go through since it is just restand, slap, restand, slap, restand, slap. But yeah, let's get into the deck profile. So for the ride deck, we have the dedicated ride line for Astroterm. Um, Grade 1, Blitz Kilo Arm Base Stand. When it is rode upon by the Grade 2, you can search your deck for up to one Armor Supply Vehicle Preciosa, so the main order for the deck. Add it to hand and shuffle your deck. Then, just like every other Grade 1, it is a 13k beater if your Vanguard is the main Grade 3 of the trial deck. Then the Grade 2, basically the same thing as the Grade 1. When it's rode upon by Astroterm, you can search your deck for another Preciosa, so you get half of your orders just through the ride line, which is really nice. And then, of course, you just add to hand, shuffle your deck, and then it is a 15k intercept if your Vanguard is Astroterm. And then Astroterm itself, for anyone that doesn't already know, it has the once per turn to counterblast and search for a copy of itself, and then it gets 10k. And then when it attacks, Energy Blast 4, choose one of your rear guards, stand it, and your Vanguard and the unit that you stand gets an extra 5k, which is really fun because when we get to the order, we'll see how the numbers can ramp. So let's get into the main deck right away. So first things first, we have 3 more copies of Astroterm for our Persona rides. And then we have 3 copies of Swing by Dragon. So for Swing by Dragon is the double R grade 3 support that came out in set 1. And its ability is when it's placed on rear, if you have an Astroterm Vanguard, you can counterblast 1 to draw a card. Then from front row, once per turn, when your other unit is stood by your card's ability, you can Soul Blast 1 to give Swing by an extra 2k. If you Soul Blasted an Astroterm, then you can restand this unit altogether. So it gets a 2k, it restands, and you have another attack. So Astroterm is the only trial deck that can get you 5 attacks, just within its own mechanics, which is really nice. Some other decks you can try to hit 5, but I feel like it requires a lot of hoop jumping to get to that consistently. But Astroterm, as long as you have a Swing by Dragon, will be able to get you those 5 attacks on a Persona ride turn, which is really nice. The only problem that I've found so far is that the Swing by lane is usually really small. But other than that, it is a nice way to try to swat away extra rear guards or try to, just to try and poke your opponent with an extra attack. But yeah, that's it for the grade 3s. Next, we run 4 copies of Sickle Blade of Inquest Habitable Zone. Really good card for the deck as you are constantly Persona riding. Its ability, of course, is when you discard it during your ride phase, you can Soul Blast 1 to return it to the bottom of your deck and draw a card. Then its second ability, when it is placed rear, if you Persona Road this turn, you can Counterblast 1, search your deck for up to 1 set order card, add it to hand, and for the rest of the turn, you can play a second order without having to pay its cost. So it's really good for being able to search out your Preciosas and sort of being able to get them out there for free. You Counterblast 1 already for the Sickle, but then putting it out is costless after that point. So being able to just get a unit out as well as get more of our orders out is really nice. Next, we run 4 copies of Zinger Razor. When this unit is stood by the ability of your grade 3 or greater card with Astroterm in its card name, this unit gets an extra 10k until end of turn. So it goes from 10 to 20 to whatever pumped number it gets to with the Astroterm ability. And This is dedicated support, so if you aren't trying to spend too much, then I would suggest just getting these. The highest end version of this would probably be Combine Rusher. It gives an extra 10k on attack as long as you have two of the same set order in your order zone, and that won't be very difficult with this deck. And it starts at 20 on the first attack, so you don't have to go from 10 to 20. You can start at 20, restand, and then it goes up to 30. And then a mid-range replacement for this would be Advent Robusts, much cheaper than the Combine Rushers. The Counterblast lets you search, so it can also sort of be here in the place of the habitable zones if you don't have any. And yeah, it's 23 on its own, so it's a magic number. It's a 15k guard just by itself, and yeah, you're able to force out just more guard earlier out in the turn, and then restand the lane and make it even bigger with your Vanguard. But yeah, Zinger Razor is what I have in here, just because I moved the Advent Robusts to my Rotovisor deck. But that's what I would put there. Next, we have 4 copies of Armor Supply Vehicle Preciosa. So this is the main gimmick order of the deck. Counterblast 1 to play it, which I think really sucks. I don't like that we have to Counterblast 1 for it, but that's just me. From Order Zone, when your rear guard is stood by the ability of your grade 3 or greater card with Asuterm in its card name, until end of turn, that stood unit and all of your vanguards gets an extra 5k. So, when we look at sort of the natural order of progression for the deck, by grade 3 you will have 2 Preciosas at least in your possession. If you haven't played it in turn 2, then you'll only have 1. If you played in turn 2 and you played turn 3, you'll have 2. And this, in tandem with your Asuterm ability, will give an accumulative plus 30,000 to your field. So an extra 15k goes to your Vanguard, because you'll have 5k off of Asuterm and then another 5k each off of each of these orders, and then your rear guard also gets that same amount of boost. So this deck can hit really hard. Its power curve is a little bit slower, as is with all of the startup trial decks, save for maybe Triumph Dragon if you cheese some stuff out. But yeah, once you hit turn 4, you're swinging 5 attacks, and a few of those attacks are really big, just to start off with. So that you want to get these out as soon as possible, so that your Vanguard and whatever rear guard you're standing scale that much higher. But yeah, that is it for the grade 2s. Not very much. There is quite a bit of Counterblast in this deck, which I don't like, but we make do with it. And thankfully we have things like this. We have 3 copies of Detonation Mutant Bulbamine at the end of the battle that it boosted. If your order zone has a set order, you put it into Soul to Soul Charge 1. Very old card in the format, so most people probably already know this. But yeah, Tale as old as time, Counter Charge as old as rhyme. We have 2 copies of Progress Globe Dragon, so this is the set 2 common grade 1 that came out for all of the start decks. At the end of the battle that this boosted, if your unit was stood by a card ability this turn, retire this unit, choose a grade 3 or greater card with Asuterm in its card name from your soul or drop, and put it on the bottom of your deck. If you chose a card, countercharge 1. So we have 5 countercharges. Next, running 3 copies of Putzenschwursten Weeple, the maid. This unit gets all the following according to the number of dispatch: 3 Sisters of Cleaning in your order zone, 1 or more. During your turn, she gets 5k. 2 or more, she cannot be chosen by opponent's card effects. And 3 or more, all of your units get an extra 5k if she's in your center. So she goes from 13 to possibly 18 throughout the game. And she also has resist, so that's nice too. Other than that, she's really just here to be a back row presence. Everything else in the deck kind of just dissipates on its own, so she is here to add a little bit more power in the back. And with the 4 copies of the maid order that we run, our front row can get quite a bit beefier. I see the maid order sort of working in 2 thresholds. The first threshold is 2. because with plus 4k, your grade 2s can hit a Vanguard by themselves, and at plus 8k, you basically have a back row unit boosting for 8k, which is nice because, again, most of the stuff most of the grade 1s in the deck outside of Weeple just let themselves go at the end of their ability. So having this to supplement the lack of back row, I think is something to test in this deck. And next we have, of course, our 4 Sentinels. We have the 1 Elementaria that I had lying around, so it's just in there. And then, of course, the 3 regular PDs. And that is it for everything that is not a trigger in this deck. And on to the triggers. Of course, we have Eldo Breath as our OT, because who doesn't want restanding things with double crit and gigantic numbers? And then we run a rainbow. So 4 crit, 3 draw, and 4 front. And then, of course, 4 heals. And I have one of the, if your opponent's unit attacked more than once this turn, special effect heal. And yeah, that is it for this deck profile. Just again, a few side notes. This was the deck that I was most excited for upon initial release. I still really like playing the deck. Again, the only thing that I find a little bit difficult to play with in this deck is that it's a rush deck, but that rush doesn't rush until turn 4 effectively, and it doesn't feel great. So hopefully in the future we get some more early game pieces for this deck, just to distinguish itself a little bit more from the other startup trial decks, because so far all of the known support for this is order fetching, and we don't need any more order fetchers in this deck. There's too many already, and it doesn't seem like a good idea to put more order fetchers in here, because again, we get half of our orders already guaranteed, and then we can run things like Sickle, which have more utility than just being able to search something. So yeah, that's sort of my opinion on it. Maybe something that can do stuff in the early game, I don't know. Just something that we can do on maybe turn 2 or something to bridge that early game gap, because a lot of the time, especially with the trial decks, if you go second, you are screwed, and there's nothing that you can do about it unless you put in just generic stuff that works early game. But sadly, that's not available to, it's not viable for all builds, so, or for all decks. But yeah, that's where we are with this, and I hope you guys enjoyed this very quick deck profile. I was much more clear with this one, I feel, and much more cut and dry with it. But yeah, I hope you found this informative. If there's anything that I missed that you have any questions on or any suggestions on, please leave them down in the comments. I'm still semi-actively tinkering around with all of these decks. So whatever suggestions or changes or questions that you have for things that I put in or I took out that you have in your own deck, please let me know down in the comments, and we can have a discussion, and that'll be really interesting. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for visiting the Outpost once again, and I will see you in the next one.